The basement light hummed overhead. Not bright, just enough to remind me I was still here. Dinner had started upstairs. I could hear the forks, the laughter, the sound of chairs being pulled out. None for me. I stayed quiet. Like always. My tea had gone cold an hour ago. Still, I held the cup. It warmed nothing now, just old china against older hands. There was a picture frame on the floor beside me. Us three. Evan, me, and his father. Taken the summer before the cancer. The frame was tilted a crack across the glass. They had moved things around last week. Stephanie said the space needed fresh energy. She meant less of me. I tried to speak during breakfast this morning about the grocery list or the school fundraiser or something, but my words landed flat. Stephanie didn't look up. Later I offered to pick up the girls from school. She smiled. Then turned to Evan and said she means well, but she's really just background noise these days. She said it like I wasn't sitting there, like the noise couldn't hear her. I looked at my son. He said nothing. Not one word. Not even a glance. That silence was the deepest sound I'd ever heard. I cleaned up the dishes after. Folded the napkins. Wiped the crumbs she didn't notice. Then I came down here. The air in the basement was dry and heavy. I could still smell the cedar from the old wardrobe. The stairs creaked as someone moved upstairs. No one called my name. I used to think silence was kindness. That not speaking up was how love stayed whole. That shrinking meant peace. But that night, in a room with no windows, I finally realized you can't be defended when they no longer see you as something worth defending. And just like that, something inside me stood up, even if I didn't. I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time I wore red lipstick to court, pressed my hair every morning, and walked the halls like I knew where every secret was kept. Because I did. 28 years as a county clerk. You learn what people hide between the lines. I met James in 1974. He was steady. The kind of man who bought two of everything just in case one broke. We bought the house on Lawson Street in '79. Red brick. White shutters. Back then it smelled like sawdust and new carpet. That house saw every version of me. Newlywed. New mother. Young widow. James passed when Evan was 17. Heart just gave out one morning. I remember the toast burning in the kitchen. I never made toast again. Evan took it hard. He wouldn't talk much. Just played his music too loud and wore James's old flannel-like armor. I let him. I worked double shifts to keep things steady. Didn't cry in front of him. Didn't crumble. Only once in the laundry room when I found James's cufflinks in a pants pocket I missed. They clicked against the tile floor like coins dropping. It broke me. Quietly. But I raised that boy. Got him to graduation. Debt-free. No trouble with the law. A decent man. When he called at 42 asking me to move in, I hesitated. He said, "Mama, I don't want you alone in that big house." So I packed a single suitcase, a photo album, and that old red folder, the one with the deed. I gave it to Evan that first week. "I trust you to hold on to this," I said, "in case I forget where I put it." He smiled. Said, "Don't worry, Mama." And just like that, I left my house behind, and walked into a new one that didn't know where to put me. The basement wasn't finished. No windows. Just one narrow vent near the ceiling. It let in dust more than daylight. Evan said they'd fix it up. Put in a little kitchenette. A better light fixture. That was a year ago. There's still a single bulb above the stairs. It flickers when it rains. But I didn't complain. I told myself at least I can hear the kids' footsteps when they run across the hardwood. That sound used to warm me. Now it just reminds me how far below I sit. Stephanie didn't like clutter. So I kept my photo albums in a drawer. my Bible in a tote bag, my sewing box in the closet covered with a dish towel. One day, she brought home new furniture. Minimalist, she called it. Clean lines. Functional, she said. My rocking chair disappeared that week. I asked once gently and she said, "Oh, it's in storage." We needed more flow in the living room. It was my husband's chair. The one he built with his own hands years ago in our garage when we couldn't afford baby toys, and he carved birds into the arms of it for Evan. Now it was gone. Tucked somewhere cold. Like me. The house didn't smell like mine. No cinnamon. No old paper. No wood polish on Sundays. Only lemon-scented wipes and whatever candle Stephanie bought from Target that week. Lavender. Then vanilla. Then something called clean linen. It all smelled the same to me, like erasure. I tried to help with dinner once. Suggested meatloaf. Stephanie smiled thinly. "Actually, we're doing grain bowls now." I nodded. And went back downstairs. The only recipe they wanted from me was silence. And I served it warm and folded every night. Friday dinner was Stephanie's favorite tradition. Long table. Cloth napkins. Candlelight, even if the kids hated it. She liked things just so. Matching silverware. Muted playlists. No interruptions. I used to make cornbread on Fridays. They didn't want that anymore. "Too heavy," she said. "Too much butter." So I sat, folded my hands, and passed the salad when asked. That evening, they were talking about school schedules. Stephanie was organizing the calendar on her phone. I offered to help. I could pick up the girls, I said. Just 2 days a week. If it helps. Stefania didn't look at me. She looked at Evan. Then she said, "She means well. But she's really just background noise these days." I didn't breathe for a second. Evan didn't flinch. Didn't say a word. He took a sip of water. And nodded. That was all. I felt something pull back inside my chest. Not break. Just retreat. The way a wave folds before disappearing. I cleared my plate early. Took the stairs slower than usual. Each step a little heavier. Back in the basement, I sat on the edge of the bed. The tea was cold again. The vent above buzzed. I thought about the folder. Red. Still tucked in the drawer under my winter sweaters. I hadn't opened it in years. Didn't need to. I knew every line of that deed by heart. James had signed it to me in '99. Said, "No matter what happens, this roof will always be yours." I never thought I'd need to prove that. Until now. Sunday used to be my favorite. Grocery day. Laundry. Stew simmering low from morning to dusk. That changed quietly. Now Stephanie shops alone. Evan helps with the loading. I stay home. I offered once to wash the girls' uniforms. She said, "We already have a system." Thanks though. The word though was like a door that shut slowly right in front of me. Even my coffee mugs disappeared. The ones with chipped rims and faded florals from the '80s. They were replaced with tall white ones, sleek, clean, soulless. Stephanie liked things clean. Not just in dust and surface, but in memory. No clutter. No stories attached. One day, I saw her take down the frame in the hallway. It held Evan's first grade photo, the one I paid for with cafeteria overtime and a coupon. She swapped it with a quote print. Something about future focus. She walked past me, didn't mention it. I stood there staring at the blank nail where his smile used to hang. That evening I checked the coat rack. My shawl was gone. The one James gave me when Evan was born. When I asked, she said, "Oh, I put it in the donation pile." It looked worn. I wanted to say, "That's the point. It's lived. It's been through winters, birthdays, funerals, forgiveness," but I just nodded. In this house, the less you carry, the longer you stay. And I was carrying far too much memory. There used to be a calendar on the fridge. A real one. Paper. With little notes in my handwriting: doctor's appointments, birthdays, soup days. Stephanie replaced it with a magnetic weekly board. She called it streamlined. I wasn't on it. No one said I couldn't write. They just never handed me the marker. I asked once, "Is Sunday still dinner with the Thompsons?" Stephanie replied, "Oh, we're just keeping it simple this week. Thought it'd be easier." Evan didn't even look up. He was reading emails at the table. The next day, I noticed my name missing from the group text. The one for household logistics. I asked Evan. He said, "Oh, maybe it's because you don't use emojis." Then he laughed. Like that explained being left out. I didn't laugh back. One evening I reached for my wedding photo. It used to sit on the mantel. Me in cream lace. James in his only navy suit. Gone. In its place, a framed abstract print, all soft beige and messy lines. I opened a drawer and found the picture face down under old batteries and coupons. The glass was cracked. No one told me. No one asked. No one cared. I took it back to the basement. Dusted it off. Set it gently by my night lamp. At least down here memories still had a place to sit. Upstairs, they had been voted out. Stephanie once said, "This house has to reflect who we are now." What she meant was not me. Not the woman who ironed school shirts while listening to Billie Holiday. Not the wife who hung wind chimes James made from old silver spoons. Not the mother who once walked 6 miles in rain to deliver Evan's science project on time. Those versions of me were inconvenient now. I wasn't being pushed out. I was being quietly repainted. I stopped setting the table. They rearranged the dining room anyway. Added more plants. Took out the leaf extension. More cozy, Stephanie said. I used to sit at the end. Closest to the kitchen. Where I could serve seconds. Where James used to sit. Now there wasn't space. My chair was missing. I found it in the garage under a box labeled seasonal decor. I ran my hand along the seat. Still smooth. Still mine. But not welcome. That Friday, they had guests over, neighbors I didn't know. I stayed downstairs. Heard laughter. The clink of glass. Evan's voice deeper than I remembered, telling some story about work. No one came to get me. Not even the girls. I waited until the voices faded. Came up to wash the glasses. That's when I saw it. The family wall. All new frames. Perfectly matched. Bright photos, vacations, holidays, birthdays. I scanned them slowly. There wasn't a single picture with me in it. Not one. Not even the one from Lucy's recital, the photo she asked me to take because her hair was curled just right. It was gone. I stood there with the sponge in my hand. Water running. Lights soft. And I realized. They hadn't erased me in anger. They had simply edited me out like a typo. A version of the family they didn't think needed correcting. I turned off the water. Dried my hands on a towel that wasn't mine. Went back downstairs without a word. The frame with James and me still sat by my lamp. Still cracked. Still true. I looked at it, then looked at the drawer beside it. Inside, under sweaters, the red folder rested. I hadn't opened it in years. But I remembered every line. And for the first time, I asked myself, if they don't see me in this home, asterisk, why should I keep pretending they belong in mine, asterisk? The red folder hadn't moved. Same drawer. Same scent of cedar and old paper when I pulled it open. It was lighter than I remembered. Or maybe I had grown heavier. With years, with silence. With the weight of being treated like an afterthought. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet not quite touching the cold floor. The lamp beside me flickered gently, the only light that didn't question my presence. I ran my hands along the folder's surface. The vinyl had cracked slightly at the corner, like skin after a long winter. Inside, neatly folded, carefully kept, was the deed. Dated 1999. Signed in blue ink by James Bell. I traced his name with my finger. He always wrote slow, as if each letter was a promise. I remember the day he signed it. We were in the kitchen. The girls were toddlers then. He just built the garden gate and called me inside with ink on his hands. "Put it in your name," he said. "You're the one who keeps this house whole." Back then I thought it was love. Now I knew it was also foresight. I closed the folder but didn't put it away. I left it out. Not as a threat. Not yet. But as a quiet reminder that my life had not been erased, no matter how many pictures were taken down. That week, I started watching again. Not out of suspicion. Out of clarity. I noticed things. How Stephanie locked the filing cabinet now. How Evan skipped over my name when giving instructions to the girls. How dinner was decided without a glance in my direction. I was no longer included. Only endured. The kind of presence you mute out of habit, not malice. And yet, the bills still came in my name. The insurance policy. The tax statement. Even the mortgage refinance alert they forgot to open. I held that envelope for a long time. My name. My address. My responsibility. And still they lived as if I were a guest in what James and I had built from nothing. I made a cup of tea. Saturday by the small window well. Listened to the heater groan above. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I reached for the old phone book. Flipped until I found the name. Carter Elaine, attorney at law. I picked up the phone. And dialed. Elaine Carter hadn't changed much. Still wore her hair up in a clip. Still used the same blue pens, the kind that bled through thin paper. We hadn't seen each other in over a decade. But when she opened the door to her office above the bakery downtown, she smiled like it had only been yesterday. "Marjorie Bell," she said, "well, if this isn't the ghost of my better days." I laughed softly. That kind of laugh that comes from the ribs, not the mouth. We sat by the window. Sunlight warmed the old oak table between us. Her office still smelled like lemon polish and coffee grounds. I placed the red folder in front of her. She didn't ask why I'd come. She just opened it. Page by page she read in silence. Her eyes paused at the notarized deed. She ran her thumb across the embossed seal. "You still have full title," she said. "Undisputed. Legally and morally." I nodded. Then hesitated. Then whispered. "But do I still have the right to act on it?" She looked up. "Why wouldn't you?" I swallowed. "Because they look at me like I'm furniture. Like I belong to the past." Elaine didn't blink. She leaned forward, voice low, but clear. "Marjorie, just because they stopped listening doesn't mean your signature stopped meaning something." I let out a long breath. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. The kind with yellow lines and confidence. She started jotting notes. I watched her hand move steady, firm. Like mine used to be. "We'll send a preliminary notice," she said. "No threats. Just a quiet reminder that the deed still breathes." I closed my eyes. Not in fear. In relief. I had not imagined my history. I had not exaggerated my effort. I had not asked for too much. I had simply been too quiet for too long. Elaine offered me tea. Chamomile. In a chipped mug with a sunflower on it. I held it in both hands. Warmth returned to my fingers before it reached my chest. We didn't talk much after that. She understood some stories don't need retelling. Just reclaiming. When I left her office, the wind outside was sharp, but it no longer stung. Not with that folder in my arms. Not with my name still written in ink where it always belonged. The folder felt heavier on the way home. Not in weight. In meaning. It rested on my lap like something sacred. Like an answer I didn't know I had the right to ask. I sat on the bus 2 rows from the back watching the trees blur past. The afternoon sun spilled through the windows and for once I didn't shrink from the light. Back at the house, no one noticed I was gone. Stephanie was in the kitchen AirPods and cutting fruit into symmetrical cubes. Evan was typing at the dining table. Still wearing the same college sweatshirt. Still avoiding eye contact. The girls were upstairs playing music I didn't recognize. I slipped past them folder in hand and returned to the basement. It smelled of laundry detergent and old carpet. Still it was the only space that hadn't tried to erase me. I set the folder on the desk. Smoothed out the pages. Opened a notebook. And began to write. Dates. Expenses. Insurance payments. Names of neighbors who remembered James. Receipts for repairs I had paid for long after Evan moved in. Each line I wrote felt like a stitch pulling my story back into fabric that had unraveled too long. I paused only once when I saw the wedding photo. Still cracked. Still there. I moved it closer to the desk. Let it watch me. Let it witness me. Because no one upstairs was looking. I lit a small candle. Lavender. The kind James used to hate. Said it gave him headaches. But I liked it. And that night, I let myself like something without apology. I sat back, tea in hand, and whispered aloud. They don't see me. But this house still does. And for the first time, since I'd stepped into this basement, I stopped waiting to be invited back upstairs. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't chasing respect. I was simply remembering that dignity doesn't knock. It unlocks quietly when you realize you never lost the key. And I had kept it all along. It was Lucy's 10th birthday. Double digits. The age when little girls begin pulling away, not out of defiance, but to see if you'll notice. James used to say 10 is when they stop asking to be held but still hope you'll reach for their hand. I hadn't been asked to help plan the party. No one asked if I had ideas or recipes or memories worth offering. But I had one thing. Peach cobbler. Not the store kind. Not the kind from freezer aisles or Pinterest blogs. The kind that smelled like July evenings in the old house. Sticky hands. Screen doors. A scoop of vanilla melting too fast. Lucy loved it. She said so herself 2 summers ago after a scraped knee and too much sun. Grandma, yours tastes like stories. I held on to that. So I woke early. Before the upstairs lights came on. Before the noise of a house that no longer needed me started its daily rhythm. I pulled out the old apron, cream-colored with faded peaches embroidered at the hem. It still smelled like nutmeg and soap. I peeled the fruit slowly, rinsed each one like it mattered. Cut away bruises gently as if memory could be softened by careful hands. I found my oldest baking dish white ceramic cracked at one corner but still steady. The batter came together by muscle memory. No measurements needed. Only touch. Only trust. I didn't hum while I baked. Didn't smile. Just stayed quiet. Focused. This wasn't a celebration. It was an offering. A reminder that I still knew how to give even when no one asked. The oven filled the basement with warmth. For the first time in weeks I felt like something in this house belonged to me. I wrote a card in blue ink the kind James liked. To Lucy. Happy birthday. Love you always, Grandma. I wrapped the dish in a clean towel. Placed it gently into a basket beside the card and a single yellow rose. Then I climbed the stairs. Slowly. One hand on the wall for balance. The house above buzzed with movement. Music played upbeat fast. Not the kind I could name. Balloons hung from the ceiling. A cake store-bought sat on the counter, its frosting too perfect. Stephanie wore lavender. Evan had on a party hat tilted too far back. He always hated hats as a boy. I stood in the doorway, basket in hand. No one turned. No one noticed. Not until I cleared my throat. Stephanie looked up. Eyes widened slightly. "Oh, we didn't know you were coming up." I nodded. Lifted the basket. Brought something for Lucy. She reached out quickly. Smiled that practiced smile. The one that didn't touch her eyes. "Oh, that's sweet of you. We already have desserts, but we'll set it aside." She took the basket. Placed it on the far corner of the counter, behind juice boxes and unopened paper plates. Then turned away. Back to her playlist. Back to the party. Back to forgetting I was ever there. No one called Lucy over. No one opened the card. No one said thank you. So I stood there, in my soft shoes, with my hands now empty. And I listened to my own silence press against the noise. It didn't win. It never does. But it didn't leave either. It stayed. Like me, I walked back downstairs slower than before. Not because of my knees. Because of the weight. The kind that settles in your chest when hope curls in on itself. When kindness is received like clutter. The door to the basement creaked behind me. I didn't bother to close it softly. The peach cobbler had filled the house with warmth. But here in this half-lit room with low ceilings, the scent had nowhere to go. It clung to the air. Sweet. Lonely. I sat on the edge of the bed. Kicked off my shoes. Loosened the apron strings and folded it neatly over the dresser. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just quiet, like the kind of crying that lives in your throat for months and finally finds its way out. My tears didn't fall fast. They slid. Soft. Patient. Like they had all the time in the world to say what words could not. I looked at my hands. Flowered earlier. Empty now. The same hands that once rocked Evan to sleep. That stitched his Halloween costumes with midnight thread. That held his trembling fingers the day James was buried. These hands had built something. Not perfect. But real. And now they had been passed over for cupcakes in plastic containers and photos without me in them. I turned toward the desk. The red folder still sat there. Unopened since yesterday. But it didn't need to be opened again. I knew what it held. It held the truth. My name. My claim. My right to more than just a seat at someone else's table. I stood up. Walked to the small mirror above the lamp. Looked at myself. Really looked. Not at the gray hair. Not at the tired skin. But at the woman who had survived grief, raised a man, and still made peach cobbler with love even when no one asked. And I said aloud, "They erased me from the kitchen." Then after a pause long enough to feel real, I whispered, "Maybe it's time I erased them from the deed." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Of decision. Of dignity. Of something waking up that had been too polite for too long. The next morning I ironed my blouse. The one with the soft lavender buttons. The one I used to wear when renewing car titles or mailing certified envelopes. It smelled faintly of starch and the past. I packed my purse with quiet things. Reading glasses. Checkbook. One blue pen. And the red folder. Evan and Stephanie were in the kitchen when I walked out. They didn't look up. Didn't ask where I was going. So I didn't offer it. Let them believe I was running errands. Let them believe I was still the version of me they could overlook. Downtown was just waking up. Birds scattering breadcrumbs by the bakery. The smell of roasted beans slipping from cafe windows. I made my way back to Elaine Carter's office. The second time felt different. Like walking into a courtroom after knowing you'd already won, just by showing up. Elaine greeted me without small talk. She was that kind of woman. Efficient. Kind. But allergic to unnecessary delay. We sat. She opened the folder again. We reviewed everything line by line. First she said we'll file a quiet title affirmation. Nothing loud. Just a firm re-establishing of what's already yours. She pulled up a document template. Typed quickly. With certainty. I watched her fingers move across the keyboard. Confident. Sharp. Like music no one else in my life remembered I could still hear. I signed where she told me to. Initialed the margins. Chose not to read the fine print. Not because I didn't care. But because for the first time in years, I trusted my instincts more than the paperwork. Elaine leaned back, looked me in the eye. You don't have to send the notice now, she said. But when you're ready, we'll have it drafted. Clean. Private. No noise. I nodded. I didn't need noise. I just needed space. Not a room in a basement. A real space. One built from respect. And legally mine. I stood. Tucked the folder back into my bag. Thanked her. And stepped out into the sun. It hit my shoulders warm and full, not like light through a vent, but like a welcome. That was the first time, in a long time, I didn't feel beneath anything. Back at the house everything looked the same. Same trimmed hedges. Same beige rug at the front door with "Bless this home" stitched in fading cursive. No one asked where I'd been. Stephanie glanced up from her laptop. Evan muttered a hello without pausing his typing. I nodded, hung my coat, and descended the stairs with a stillness they didn't notice. But I noticed everything now. That afternoon I opened a shoebox under my bed. Inside were things no one had asked about in years. Old receipts. Grocery bills. Checks I'd written to cover roof repairs and a new water heater 3 winters ago. Each slip of paper was proof of presence. Of contribution. Of care. I found a birthday card from Lucy, age 6, crayon hearts and the words "I love your pancakes, Grandma." It had jelly stains and a corner folded like a secret. I kept it anyway. There was also a faded text thread on my old flip phone. From Evan 4 years ago. Mom, don't worry about the mortgage this month. You've done enough. We're lucky to have you here. I took a photo of that message. Saved it to a folder on Carter's instructions. Not because I wanted a battle, but because my story deserved a witness. That evening, I sat at the small desk again. Wrote down dates. Logged hours. Recollected who bought what and when. Not every detail was exact. But the heart of it, the years of invisible work, was solid. The girls knocked once. I didn't answer. I wasn't hiding. I was working. And for the first time in that house, I didn't feel guilty for asking the past to speak clearly. I picked up my wedding ring from the dish by the lamp. Slipped it on even though my fingers had thinned. It still fit. Not because nothing had changed, but because some things hold their shape even after the world forgets their worth. I closed the folder for the night. Turned off the light. And whispered, I built this home with my hands, my meals, my silences. They don't have to say thank you. But they won't pretend I was never here. The letter was already waiting when I arrived at Elaine's office. Typed in black ink. Double-spaced. No threats, no theatrics. Just the truth. Elaine slid it across the desk. I read it slowly. It began with my full name. Then stated clearly I was the legal owner of the property at 423 Lawson Street. That all current residents were present at my invitation not by legal entitlement. And that said invitation was now being rescinded. Effective in 30 days. I paused. My hand resting on the last sentence. It read, this is a request made with dignity, not hostility. I looked at Elaine. May I change something? She nodded. Handed me the pen. I crossed out one line. Then wrote in cursive shaky, but mine. This is a request made with love, not silence. Elaine didn't say anything. She just smiled. We printed 3 copies. One for record. One for them. One for me. I sealed the envelope slowly. Folded the flap with care. Not because I feared what came next, but because I wanted every crease to hold the weight of what I had never said aloud. On the way home, I passed the library. The one where I used to take Evan on summer afternoons. They had new bricks now. New benches. But the same hydrangeas still bloomed by the door. I sat for a moment. Watched 2 older women sharing a muffin from a paper bag. They laughed softly. Tore pieces with their hands. No rush. And I thought, I want that kind of life again. Asterisk. Quiet. Shared. Unashamed. When I returned, Stephanie was vacuuming. Evan was fixing something under the sink. No one looked up. I placed the envelope in the center of the dining table, next to a bowl of plastic lemons and a magazine about weekend decor. Then I went back downstairs. No speech. No storming. Just a letter. A sentence. And a name. Mine. Signed at the bottom with the same blue ink James once used when he gave me the house all those years ago. I slept better that night. Not because anything had changed yet, but because for the first time I had spoken in the language they respected most. Paper. Proof. And quiet certainty. Has anyone ever tried to erase your place, not with anger, but with silence? We'd love to hear your story. You're not alone. The envelope stayed on the table for 2 days. No one touched it. No one mentioned it. But I saw Stephanie glance at it once while pouring juice. Again while wiping the counter. Evan noticed too. He shifted it slightly when setting down his coffee. Never asked. Never opened. Just let it sit there like a ticking clock. They were too proud to silence. On the 3rd night, after the girls went to bed, I heard their voices upstairs. Low. Tight. Thin like thread being pulled too fast. She can't be serious, Stephanie said. Then silence. Then a sharp whisper. What if she is? I didn't go up. I didn't need to. Some truths are clearer when heard through walls. The next morning Evan knocked. First time in months. I opened the basement door. Waited. He didn't step in. Just looked down the stairs like they were a canyon. Mummy said we got your letter. I nodded. Didn't speak. His eyes shifted. He held the envelope in one hand. Unsealed. Bent at the corners. Like they had read it too many times without understanding it once. You don't have to do this, he said. It's your home too. That word too was meant to comfort. But it exposed more than he knew. I stepped up one stair. Met his eyes. This was my home first, Evan. And the only one acting like I don't belong wasn't me. His jaw clenched. I saw the boy in him for a flash, the one who forgot his lunch and cried when his hamster died. But he didn't apologize. He only said Stephanie's upset. I smiled gently. Not cruel. Not bitter. Just tired. She should be, I said. Sometimes upset is what truth feels like when it finally arrives. He didn't answer. Just looked past me into the basement as if it had never occurred to him what it meant to live beneath his own mother. He left the envelope on the banister. Walked away. Didn't slam the door. Didn't yell. But the silence he left behind was louder than any fight we ever could have had. Stephanie didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not in words. But in movements. She vacuumed louder. Closed cabinet doors a bit too firmly. Rearranged the furniture again as if control could be reasserted by shifting a couch 6 inches to the left. I said nothing. Let her tug at order like a blanket that no longer covered the bed. On the 3rd day, I came upstairs at noon. Not to ask. Not to serve. Just to be. I stood in the doorway of the living room. She was sorting laundry, folding napkins with sharp, deliberate creases. Her eyes flicked up. She didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just studied me like I was furniture that had returned after being given away. I walked in slowly. Saturday, in the armchair near the window. The one that used to be mine before it was called extra. I didn't ask if it was okay. Didn't apologize for the shift in air. I just sat, crossed my ankles, folded my hands, and looked out at the yard. The bird bath James built was still there, tilted slightly. Cracked, but standing. Stephanie cleared her throat. Lucy has a sleepover this weekend. We'd appreciate if things could stay calm. Her voice was even, practiced. Like she was managing a schedule, not speaking to the woman whose name still owned the land under her feet. I turned toward her, met her gaze. That's up to you, Stephanie, I said. I'm not the one who's been unkind. Her lips parted. No words came. I stood, walked to the hallway wall. The gallery of photos still there. Still missing me. I didn't touch a single frame. Didn't ask for space. I simply looked long enough for her to notice that I noticed. Then I said, "You can keep the photos." She blinked. Confused. I added, "Because after this month I won't need the walls." Stephanie swallowed. Held the laundry tighter. She had always spoken like the house was hers. Filled it with lemon wipes and curated quiet. But that moment, she finally looked like a guest in someone else's legacy. I turned back toward the window. Let the sunlight touch my face. For once, I didn't feel like background noise. I felt like the narrator. And the story was finally mine to tell. That Saturday afternoon I made tea. Not for anyone. Just for me. Chamomile. 2 cubes of sugar. A splash of milk. The kind James used to tease me for. Said it tasted like flowers in a cardigan. I carried it out to the porch. The air was cool but soft. April light filtering through the dogwood trees. No one was outside. Stephanie had taken the girls to a ballet class. Evan was somewhere in the garage pretending to fix a bike that never needed fixing. I sat on the old wooden rocker. The one James built when we first moved in. Its creak had a rhythm I still knew by heart. I took a sip. Held the cup with both hands. Let the quiet stretch around me like a shawl. And then the screen door opened behind me. Light steps. Barefoot. Quick. It was Lucy. Her hair still damp from a rushed bath. Holding a paper napkin in her hand like it carried treasure. She stood by the porch rail. Didn't say anything at first. I waited. Didn't rush her. She looked at me. Then at the chair beside me. "Can I sit?" I nodded. Patted the spot. She climbed up legs, swinging shoulders small. Then she held out the napkin. Inside was a cookie. Half moon-shaped. Bitten once. "Mom said not to eat it before dinner," she whispered. "But I wanted to share it with you." I took it carefully. Broke off a corner. Soft. Lemon. Still warm. We sat there passing the cookie between us in silence. Then she said, almost too quiet, "Grandma, did you make the peach thing again? The one from when I was 6. I looked at her. Surprised. She smiled a little. Looked down at her feet. "I remember the smell," she said. "It smelled like your hugs." Something inside me tightened. Then loosened. Like a knot coming undone after years of holding. I touched her hand gently. "I can make it again," I said. "Just for us." She nodded. Still not looking up. Then rested her head lightly against my arm. And in that moment on that porch, with nothing grand or loud, I felt seen. "Not remember it, Zane." And maybe that was the beginning of healing. The morning they started packing, I didn't hear shouting. No slamming doors. No broken glass. Just tape being pulled in one long sticky line. That sound. So ordinary, but sharp, like something final being sealed shut. I came upstairs without rushing. The hallway smelled like cardboard and lemon cleaner. Evan stood in the living room, a box cutter in his hand, torn between purpose and hesitation. Stephanie wasn't there. She'd taken the girls to her sister's for the weekend. Said it would be less confusing. I stepped into the room. He turned, eyes tired. "Morning," he said. Like we still had them. Like mornings were still ours. I nodded. Didn't ask questions. Didn't offer help. He gestured toward the stack of boxes. "We're starting with the hallway closet." His voice was flat. Measured. Like he was reading instructions instead of narrating a goodbye. I looked over. It was the same closet where I used to keep board games. Where Lucy once hid after breaking a vase. Where James kept winter coats with peppermints in the pocket. Now it was just walls and dust. He bent down to fold a blanket. Hesitated. Then placed it in the box. I sat in the armchair. Didn't watch his hands. Watched his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't pleading. He was quiet. That was new. Evan had always filled the room with noise, facts, ideas, apologies wrapped in logic. But today, he let the silence be louder than both of us. He looked up once. Met my eyes. Then looked down again. I spoke. "Your father built this room, you know. Laid every board himself. Took 2 weeks. He didn't respond. But I saw his lip tighten. "I used to sit right here," I said, hand on the chair's worn armrest, "reading while you played with Legos." Still no words. But his shoulders dropped just slightly. We stayed there, him packing, me remembering. Both of us finally acknowledging what neither dared to name aloud. This wasn't just a move. It was a reckoning. Not because I forced it. But because he finally ran out of excuses. That night, I left the porch light on. Not for them. For me. A small act of not shrinking. Of letting the house know I still saw it as mine. The hallway creaked around 10 p.m. I heard his steps before he knocked. Still heavy on the heel, like when he was 14 and too proud to tiptoe. 3 soft knocks. I didn't rush to the door. I opened it slowly, lamp casting a warm circle behind me. Evan stood there, hands in his pockets, shoulders curled inward. He looked older that night. Not tired, just softer. "Can I come in for a minute?" I nodded. Stepped aside. He didn't sit. Just hovered by the bookshelf, as if touching anything might make it harder to speak. He cleared his throat. "I didn't know it hurt you. This much." I looked at him. Didn't offer rescue. Didn't let him off the hook with a mother's nod. Let the silence do what years of words couldn't. He shifted. "Steph, she's not cruel. She just never knew how to make space for what came before her." I still said nothing, because this moment wasn't about Stephanie. It was about the boy who had once cried into my sweater when his best friend moved away. That boy had grown up into a man who forgot that history doesn't vanish just because you change the furniture. He exhaled sharply. "I don't know how to fix this." His voice cracked on this. Barely. But enough. I took a step closer. Not out of pity. Not even forgiveness. Just truth. "You don't need to fix it, Evan," I said. "You need to stop pretending it was never broken." He looked at me. Eyes red. No tears, but no mask either. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I didn't defend you. Not once." I placed my hand on the edge of the shelf. Gripped it gently. "That was your silence to carry," I said. Not mine anymore. We stood there. Still. No hug. No music swelling. Just two people finally hearing what had been said in the quiet all along. The next morning, they loaded the car. No shouting. No door slams. Just trunk hinges, and the soft thud of folded lives placed in boxes. Lucy stood by the mailbox holding a stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better years. Stephanie arranged things quickly, avoiding my eyes. She wore sunglasses, though the sky was still overcast. Evan closed the back hatch. Patted it once. Like he was ending something he didn't know how to mourn. I stepped onto the porch. Not dramatic. Not announced. Just present. In my hand, a single item. The spare house key. Brass. Slightly rusted. Still warm from my palm. Evan noticed it first. He took a step forward. I held it out. Keep it, I said. Not because I expect you to use it, but because this house should never be fully locked to memory. He looked at the key like it weighed more than it should. Then nodded. Carefully. As if afraid it might break even though it never had. Lucy ran toward me. Small arms. Fast feet. She hugged my waist. Tight. I leaned down. Be good, I whispered. Tell stories. The kind that remember where they came from. She nodded into my sweater. Didn't let go until Stephanie called her name twice. The car doors shut one by one. Engine started. Turned. Then paused. Evan rolled down the window. Just a little. Thanks for not making this ugly, he said. I offered a soft smile. One without edges. Some goodbyes, I said, don't need to be sharp. They just need to be clear. He nodded. Rolled the window up. They drove off without honking. Without waving. Just gone. The street felt still again. Like it had taken a deep breath and was learning to hold it. I sat on the porch step. The morning was cool but not cruel. I placed the kettle back on the stove. 2 cups this time. Just in case. Not for them. For anyone who might one day remember how to knock. The house was quiet in a different way now. Not empty. Not abandoned. Just returned. I woke to birdsong instead of footsteps overhead. To my own rhythm, not someone else's schedule. The kitchen held morning light, like it had been waiting for years to be noticed again. I opened the window. Let the breeze in. It carried no voices. No clatter of cereal bowls. No whispering girls upstairs. Only air. Fresh. Unapologetic. I made coffee slowly. Real coffee, not the single-serve kind. Used the old percolator. The one James hated because it took too damn long. I liked that about it. Time should be steeped, not rushed. The mugs hadn't moved since they left. Neither had the rug or the chair or the faded cushion with threads unraveling at the corner. But something in the space had shifted. Maybe it was me. I didn't go on a vacation. Didn't call old friends or redecorate. I dusted. Polished. Watered plants that had hung on through neglect. Reclaimed corners with framed photos they never asked about. James on our wedding day. Evan's first Christmas. Me holding a pie and smiling with my whole face. I took the old sewing machine out of the hallway closet. Set it up by the window. Threaded it slowly. Not to make something new. Just to mend. Curtains with loose hems. Napkins from another decade. One of James's flannel shirts that still smelled like pine soap and sawdust. I left the basement door open now. No need to close it. No need to divide the house into them and me. I even stood in the middle of the upstairs hallway, looked straight down both ends. Not searching. Not waiting. Just standing in the place they once forgot I belonged. The mailbox still had their names on the bottom line. I peeled the sticker off. Gently. Left only mine. Marjorie Bell. No titles. No sé, oh. No paréntesis. Just me. On Tuesdays I sat on the porch with a thermos of tea. Some days no one walked by. Other days a neighbor waved. Sometimes Lucy's school bus passed, and I imagined she looked out the window and saw the porch light on. I hoped she did. Not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted her to remember that love can live in silence. That boundaries don't mean bitterness. That a woman who takes back her house can still leave the porch light on. 3 weeks after they left, I found a yellow note card tucked inside the old recipe tin. It was blank, stiff at the edges, smelled faintly of cinnamon and paper from another decade. I stared at it for a while, then picked up a pen. Wrote just 2 words. Still here. Something inside me softened. Not pain, not anger, just release. That afternoon, I brought out a folding table and set it near the front window. Not to eat, to write. I laid out paper, ink pens, sealing wax, a small bowl of dried lavender just for scent. Then I made a sign in delicate cursive. Letter writing Thursdays. Come tell your story. No judgment. No audience. Just truth. The first week, no one came. The second week, a woman in her 60s with silver curls asked if I had lined stationery. By the 4th week, 3 chairs weren't enough. We didn't talk much. Just wrote. Folded. Sipped tea. One woman cried while sealing an envelope addressed to a sister she hadn't spoken to in 17 years. Another wrote to her late husband. Someone else simply signed their name first time in decades it wasn't followed by mom, wife, or caretaker. I never asked to read the letters. I just handed out stamps and said, take your time. By June we added music. Soft jazz. Old blues. Sometimes, silence was the music. Lucy visited once. Stephanie waited in the car. She sat beside me, picked up a pen. Didn't write much. Just drew a house. 2 windows. 1 porch light. I didn't say a word. Just held the page with her until she said, I remember now. That was enough. Some legacies are not loud. They're not monuments or headlines or family names carved in stone. They're gentle. Folded. Stamped. Left in the care of quiet hands. Hands like mine. And maybe yours. The late sunlight touches the wood grain of the old table, and for a moment, everything feels soft again. I've learned that legacy isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a name remembered in silence, and a pie shared with grace. What quiet legacy do you hope to leave behind? We'd love to read your story in the comments below. You are not alone. Your journey matters. Subscribe to Grandma Radio, where every story is a second chance. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. At Grandma Radio, we believe not every pain needs to be shouted out loud. Some wounds only ask for a quiet, understanding glance. Some lives only need to be told gently and truthfully. Marjorie's story is not about revenge. It's not meant to get back at anyone. It is a quiet testimony to something larger. That at some point in life, you have the right to quietly choose where you belong. She no longer needed anyone to defend her, because she had learned to stand for herself. Not with loud words, but with an old folder, a soft phone call to her lawyer, and a little house where the wind in her own heart could speak freely again. If this story touched you even just one small part, we believe you might have something worth sharing too. Have you ever been pushed aside by your own family? Have you ever felt like background noise? Did you stay silent? Or did you speak up? We invite you to leave a few words. They don't have to be long. They only need to be true. Because maybe someone will read your words right when they need them most. In the quiet of night. In the pause between breaths. When they wonder, do I still matter, and because of you they'll know yes. Grandma Radio is more than a place for stories. We are building a space where women who were once pushed to the side can sit down and begin writing the second chapter of their lives. We share stories that are real. Slices of life sharp but soft. Never dramatized. Never judged. Only quiet rebirths. Gentle and well-deserved. If you have ever felt forgotten, please know this. Here you are, remembered. You are not alone. Your journey still continues.